You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Rocky Mountain Rooftop Network, which is a proud member of the Fans First Sports Network. I am your host, Skyler Timmons, and if you're listening to this or watching this, you'll notice that I am all on my lonesome. Not a single other person here with me. I'm all by myself. And it just sort of circumstance here this week for this episode. If you recall, last week I was with Kenneth Weber because Evan Lang, my usual cohort, was on vacation out in Texas. And unfortunately, when he came back throughout this whole week, he's been dealing with a sickness and it's kind of shot his voice. And so he wasn't available to hop on sort of last minute. And with my scheduling and everything, and as we've long heralded, I have incredibly bad internet at home. I'm usually recording somewhere else, usually the time that we have to do it. And unfortunately, there wasn't anybody else available at the time that I was able to record on Sunday. So flying solo, and that's okay. I've got the experience. Thankfully, I have done plenty of broadcasts on my own as well. And so, and now growing up in Southern Colorado, and I'm the youngest brother. I spent a lot of time by myself wandering out in the wilderness, and I've learned to talk to myself quite a bit in my life, and so no big deal. And so hopefully we can have at least a good conversation here, good content wise. Hopefully you can tune in and gather something from this, but we'll do the best we can, and that's really all we can ask for. And luckily I've been trying to do my homework and look at how you do this on your own with a podcast. And shout out to Paul Holden over at Locked on Rockies podcast. I was doing some research, watching some of his episodes of his podcast, and luckily that's given me some insight. He does it weekly, almost daily on his own, and so I took some pointers watching his videos and everything, and just having that conversation. So hopefully, bear with me, and hopefully we don't drive you away. And we always appreciate all those that tune in and support the show. If you're watching on the video version, you can see my That's Baseball t-shirt available over on our spread shop. You can find that link over on our Twitter account in the profile. It's our pinned. Got to sell some more of these, folks. It goes directly to help support the show, support us, and hopefully we can continue to try to build this thing up because this is for you, the fans, and partly for us because we love doing it. So you can do that. Go check that out. They're pretty nice shirts. We're always thinking about other designs we can look at. Just something fun to have and kind of build up the Rockies jokes and memes that we have out in the wilderness together. So as always, again, you can go find that over at Spreadshirt, our Spreadshirt shop. Again, find the link over in our Twitter account at RockyMTN Rooftop. Some other brief news. What's coming up? Well, we have just recently, this last Wednesday, we had the newest episode of Every Rocky Ever. It's a podcast I do with my brother, where it's kind of a spinoff of the Twitter account Every Rocky Ever, where we posted every single Rocky that has ever played in a game for the Colorado Rockies, all former players. And I've teamed up with my brother Dustin, and we just kind of go over and talk about them. In this most recent episode, we talked about Kurt Manwaring and Jeff Reed, Rockies Kanchik tandem in the late 90s. Really fun conversation there. Dustin has a lot of memories of those 90s Rockies, especially he absolutely hated Kurt Manwaring as a 12-year-old, and you can listen to that episode. You can also watch it on our YouTube channel over in our podcast feed as well, and witness a change of heart by a nearly 40-year-old man towards Kurt Manwaring. It's pretty fun to see. Also, as well, with the month of May coming to a close here pretty soon, you can be on the lookout for the Pebble Report podcast with Evan and Kenneth. That'll likely pop up near that first week of June or so. So coming up here pretty soon. Other than that, not much else is going on aside from lots of Rockies baseball, which we can go on into now. So, a couple of quick hits here that we can touch on. It's been a week. Been a week for the Rockies. Playing at home, finishing up a weekend series here against the Mets. They played 4 games against the Marlins, ended up winning that series, taking 3 of 4. Pretty good series for the Rockies. Pitching wise, some good timely hitting. Aside from one game where they faced Alcantara, uh, overall a decent series for the Rockies. Which over the month of May we've seen them get better, which is good to see. It's still not to a level that we would want them to be. They're still pretty bad in a lot of areas, but overall, we've seen some pitching improve. We've seen offensive numbers in some areas, in some aspects. Things have been better than they were in April. Elias Diaz continues to carry this offense in every aspect of the game, and the young guys are continuing to play and prove themselves. And unfortunately, there was a bit of a scary injury. It looks like it's going to be okay, but in the series against the Marlins, I believe it was that one of the last game of that series, I believe. One of those. It's tough they all mesh together at some point. But Brent Doyle going up trying to rob a home run ends up just bashing his knee into the center field wall. The ball was basically in his glove. Goes over the fence for a home run, and it kind of writhes around in pain on the floor. And fortunately, he's able to avoid an injured list stint, it looks like, because they diagnosed just as a knee contusion, which it could have been a lot worse. The way he looked, if you can watch a replay, and the pain he appeared to be in, the fact that he was able to walk that off under his own power, he got on carted off the field because that's a long walk from the outfield. He's able to avoid an IL stint, and here on this Saturday, looks like he's doing exercise. He's working out, feeling a lot better. Now had that ice on the knee, and looks like everything's gonna be okay. It's probably gonna be painful for a little bit, and those knee contusions really banging that knee. I don't know if you ever remember, like in high school or something, if you've ever just smacked your knee into something on the edge of a desk. That's painful, and it's a lot of the bending and putting the pressure on it. So hopefully he's getting okay with it, and it's nothing too dire, and it doesn't affect him too much. It's going to be worrisome, though, is when he gets back into activity and starts running in the outfield. How's that going to feel on his knee? Because he plays center field. He's got a lot of ground to cover. He's a fast guy, but there's still a lot of that impact on that grass in the outfield, the wear and tear on the knees. And when it's already slightly injured, you want to be careful with it. And so hopefully he's not going to try to rush it back too quickly, but he knows his body, and I really hope that things work out for him, because Doyle's been doing good. He is that elite center fielder that the Rockies have wanted for years that we haven't really had. And we've toted on him in last week's show and on the podcast this season, but he's that center fielder the Rockies have desperately needed. And defensively, he's getting it done, all aspects of the board. The offense is still coming along. Once he gets on base, he's that nice speedy threat. But when he can get on base and when that bat starts to roll a little bit more, it gets a little more comfortable, we'll see that average and those numbers continue to rise up. And it's good to see. So Brent Doyle, doing okay, coming back soon. Able to avoid the injured list stint. And in conjunction with that, this kind of, I guess, caused the next thing to happen. He goes down with that injury, but they just list him as day-to-day. But not wanting to be shorthanded, the Rockies then turned to Nolan Jones, who received his second call-up of the season, and has already played more games than he did the first time around, which a grand total of 1 is able to return back return back from Albuquerque, where he has been on a tear. Defensively, there's still things to work on what the Rockies were looking at, but you can't deny the bat, and he's got that good, solid outfield arm, but it's his corner infield defense. It's still a little bit of a work in progress, but the bat is getting there, and I think a part of that is why he gets called up, because for the most part, the Rockies could have worked a little shorthanded in this aspect. You had Michael Toglia, who ends up getting optioned back down to Albuquerque as a result of this move of bringing Jones back up. And I think it's specifically because Jones, the bat's working for him. I think that's the biggest thing. Michael Tolia's bat just isn't there yet. He had a brief stint. He was playing most every day since his call-up again here this season. And the bat's just not there. We know the potential it has. He shows it down in Albuquerque and mashes that AAA pitching. He's got the power. The walks are up down there, but it's the strikeouts that are still his plague. And there's a lot of swing and miss with Michael Toglia. And that's something we hope he can figure out, because he got the glove. The glove is there for Michael Toglia. He's got that gold glove defense, and you see kind of that double standard sometimes that the Rockies can have, where Brendan Doyle, Ezekiel Tovar, the bats are slowly coming along. They're not quite there yet. They're not what you would want them to be. Same with Ryan McMahon. Ryan McMahon's defense, incredible. The offense just isn't there for some of these guys. And so, but they're still in there because of the defense. Unfortunately for Michael Toglia, he's not getting afforded that luxury. The glove is there. Gold glove caliber defense at first base for Michael Toglia, but the bat's not there yet. And that's what the Rockies are going to need from him. And so Nolan Jones is hitting. They'll take the learning pains of playing first base on the corners with Nolan Jones to provide offense now while they wait for CJ Cron to come back. But Michael Toglia, I partly wonder if switch hitting is something that he should just kind of abandon and zero in on his more natural side, whichever side he's a better hitter at, and stick with that. Pick one or the other. As much as I love a good switch hitter, it might be time to abandon it. And we saw that with Ezekiel Tovar coming up. He was a switch hitter, and they advised him, hey, maybe you should drop that and just stick to batting right-handed, his natural side. He did so. Offense started to take off. So maybe that could be a suggestion that the Rockies look at with Michael Toglia. Say, hey, no, we love a good switch hitter. It's gotten you this far, but it's just not working anymore. You don't really look as comfortable either side of the plate. He bats left-handed more often than not, which that happens. But maybe it's just something like, instead of trying to hit both sides, just focus on one, pour all your time and talent into figuring out how to become one of the elite left-handed power bats in the game, because he has the power. It's definitely in there. So we'll see. And we'll enjoy Nolan Jones while we can here with the big league squad, because CJ Cron, he's working back from rehab. He's had the back spasms. They've kind of taken it slow with him to just let him recuperate and come back from it. But he's hitting in the cage, slowly inching his way back, and he should be back, I'm sure, back in there within the next 2 weeks, I would say. Sometime in early part of June, we'll probably see CJ Cron back in a Rockies uniform. A couple of quick hits here, otherwise with injuries. So we've got CJ Cron hitting in the cage. Antonio Senzatella got the platelet injection in his arm, in his elbow, to help with the elbow strain. He's hopefully looking at that he can come back in August, start pitching again in August with the Rockies, which is a huge blow that he has that elbow injury that's going to keep him out for a while. And hopefully just avoid Tommy John surgery at all costs. But like we talked about last week, the further this gets prolonged, And the more and more it doesn't really get better. We're looking at a lost 2024 season for Antonio Senzatella. And so hopefully that everything works back. He can rehab nice and easy. Everything goes according to plan, no setbacks. And we see him back in August and September to finish out the season strong, because the Rockies desperately need that, because hopefully they won't be fighting to avoid 100 losses at that point. Other notes, Sean Bouchard, Brendan Rodgers, rehabbing back. Sean Bouchard, looking to make that history with this freak ruptured bicep injury and kind of make that history of rehab within the season and show how that can go, and maybe be back by season's end, maybe by September. He can see some action along with Brendan Rodgers, who all these guys are a little ahead of schedule, Bouchard and Rodgers, and the Rockies are hoping, maybe these guys can come back and we can see them late in the season before we close things out. Pitching wise, Noah Davis, throwing bullpens. He should be making a rehab start here in the next couple days. Nick Mears, the same thing, starting to rehab back, throwing bullpens. He'll go and get evaluated for some rehab assignments. With Noah Davis inching back, Rockies need starting pitching. Noah Davis coming back would be good. And lastly, Ryan Feltner with that head fracture is slowly easing his way back, which is good. You can definitely tell that emotional thing is scary injury, and he's going to get his time and his space to work back. That was as far as injuries go, that's probably the worst. For Rockies fans that we've witnessed to a pitcher since Juan Nicasio, when he took a line drive to the head, and the way he crumpled on the mound broke his neck. And so, a scary, dangerous thing, and really life-threatening. And for a young pitcher like Ryan Feltner, obviously a scary thing, a very traumatic injury. And luckily, he looks to be doing okay, and he's just recuperating, and he's in the clubhouse. What a boost that is for that clubhouse and for those guys. And, a lot of these guys will do their best, even though they're not in uniform on the field performing. There's still a lot of merit to them being in the clubhouse and interacting with the team, even though they're not directly engaged with them. So best wishes to Ryan Feltner as he inches back from injury. But we'll go ahead and take a quick break here for the audio version. So stick around for these quick messages, and we'll be right back here with more action. Moving on, talking about some starting pitching options. So if you're sticking around here on the video version still and the audio version, we're back here on Affected by Altitude. Skyler Timmons here, flying solo today here for the episode, and moving right along here. So, starting pitching options. The Rockies are in need of starting pitching. We've been harping on that all season. Injuries keep mounting, and as a result, everything has turned to Dinelson Lamet. And we talked a little bit about him, that the Rockies are just kind of trying to stitch together a rotation, and the idea of Lamet starting. And this is an article I wrote over on purpleroad.com recently, this past week, of just how it's worth adding Dinelson Lamet to the starting rotation. And we look at his numbers this season, and they haven't been good. But he's been strictly used as a reliever, and things have just not panned out for him. The walks were up, he was getting hit hard, home runs, everything was not going his way, and was going a long way to prevent him from being the best option that he could be in I guess, out of the bullpen and as a pitcher. And we kind of look back at his career. This is a guy who was a fourth place Cy Young Award, had a fourth place Cy Young Award finish in 2020 in that shortened season. But we go back, kind of a flashback on his career. 2017 as a rookie with the Padres, he goes 7-8 with a 4.57 ERA in 21 games through 114 innings, gave up 18 home runs, but he had 139 strikeouts, 54 walks. So not too shabby for your rookie season. Probably hoped it would be better pitching there in San Diego, but it wasn't. But still very respectable for a 24-year-old in his first big league season. But unfortunately, the injuries started to pop up for him. Loses 2018 to Tommy John surgery. Starts the season now on the injured list in 2019. But when he comes back, he's able to put up a 4.07 ERA in 14 starts in 2019. So a nice bounce back season, comes back, 73 innings, cuts down on the home runs with 12, 105 strikeouts, 30 walks. Still a good season, nice bounce back when you come back from injury like that, Tommy John. Well, then 2020 season happens at 27, puts up a tiny 2.09 ERA in 12 starts, 69 innings, nice, and 93 strikeouts, 20 walks, cuts way down on his home runs, in half nearly, with 5. So things are looking nice for him, but again, near the end of that 2020 season, even if it was a shortened one, elbow troubles or forearm troubles, arm troubles pop up again, and he can't pitch in the playoffs for the Padres that season. So again, starts the season on the injured list. When he comes back in 2021, he's able to make 9 starts in the season, doesn't make a whole lot of starts, but again, the arm troubles pop up again, and that sends him back to the injured list after struggling, and ultimately he ends up, when he comes back, used exclusively in the bullpen for the rest of the season. And it was hard because he already lost that spot, because if you recall, the San Diego Padres, after 2020 winning on that huge trade spree, they bring in Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, and Blake Snell. So that's 3 of your 5 starting rotation spots taken up. And then you had Ryan Weathers and Chris Paddock kind of pop up as the better options in the rotation amidst Lamet's struggles. So he loses that starting spot and gets sent to the bullpen. Still respectable 4.40 ERA in 47 innings that season. But injuries kind of derailed him and lost his spot in the rotation. Then 2022 starts in the rotation, or starts out in the bullpen exclusively, pitches in 13 games to a 9.49 ERA. They decide to dump him, trade him to the Brewers for Josh Hader. Brewers immediately release him or designate him for assignment, and the Rockies pick him up. Has a decent rest of the end of the season with the Rockies as a reliever, and they saw enough to keep him around, but I fear when they did that, it was just kind of a flash in the pan. New change of scenery, maybe lesser competition near the end of the Rockies season, was in a better place to succeed. Comes away with a 4.05 ERA in 20 innings of work. Home runs are down, strikeouts and walks are still pretty good. So he's used exclusively there in that reliever role. But unfortunately, I don't think that was really what was best for him. Because as we look here in the 2023 season, pitches 12 games, 12.66 ERA in 10 2/3 innings of work. And that ends up him with an injury. He gave up 15 runs on 14 hits. That was the same total that he had with the Padres there in 2022, and about the same amount of innings. Still, and here's the big one, the kicker. Strikeouts are down, walks were up. 13 strikeouts to 12 walks for Lamet this season. Not good. About a 1-to-1 ratio, and he's not giving up the home runs. He's just getting hit hard. He's walking guys and then giving up the big hit, where he has that 2.438 whip. So that's walks hits per 9 innings pitched. He's at least given up at least 2.5 hits every 9 innings. Not great. So he's giving up a lot of hits, getting hit hard. And it's just not working, but they send him down on the rehab to Albuquerque, and he's kind of hung out down there a little longer than maybe he probably needed to. But I think it's because the Rockies were working on, while he's rehabbing, we're going to turn him back into a starter. We're going to stretch him out because we are in desperate need of a starting pitcher option, because the guys we're bringing up, they're getting hammered. Guys are getting injured. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel here. But Lamet is giving him that option to be a starter, and he's done very well down in AAA Albuquerque. He's pitched in 3 games. He's made 3 starts. The first one was more or less, the reliever's going to start because he's going to get his work in early. But then they moved on of, okay, we're going to have him start. He's going to go 3 or 4 innings and see what he can do. Try to stretch him out. Things look pretty good. We'll throw him out there again. Hey, things are still looking pretty good. And it's going to be good here. And as I try to pull up his game logs here, my phone here. But it's interesting to see what he's been able to do in his outings down in Albuquerque, because the Rockies are going to need that. And you look at the mindset of a pitcher. This is something I always had. Growing up, some guys just don't have the mentality to be a reliever. For a bit they can, but the more they do it, sometimes things just don't click. You just don't have it. And he was coming into tough situations. Sometimes guys were on base, sometimes coming in with a clean inning, but it was just late in the game, and things just weren't clicking for him this season as a reliever. So they send him down to Albuquerque. First time around, goes 2 innings, allows 1 run on 4 hits in 2 innings of work just to get that work in. Then they start thinking, hey, let's maybe stretch him out a bit. May 20th, 4 perfect innings with 4 strikeouts on 66 pitches, just on a good 38 pitches. Not too shabby. Through 4 innings, perfect baseball, no walks. Really, really solid. And then his last start on Friday, May 26th, goes 4 2/3, no runs on 2 hits, 6 strikeouts, 1 walk, and does so on 63 pitches. That's pretty dang good. And I know it's AAA baseball. You can take things with a grain of salt, but then you think of the offensive numbers that can be put up in the PCL for a guy that's been used exclusively as a reliever for the better part of near 2 years, 2.5 or so years, for him to come out and do that in Albuquerque and just his second really stretch out start, things were working for him. And that was a really low scoring game. I believe they ended up winning that game. Yeah, I believe the Isotopes ended up winning that game. It was a pretty, a drastic decision. So it was a really low scoring game. It's impressive. And I think the Rockies are going to get, it's worth a shot seeing what Dinelson Lamet can do as a starter for the Rockies. If it doesn't pan out, you can cut bait with him. If you don't want to send him back to the bullpen because the bullpen's been so good, maybe you can stick him back there, and Connor Siebold or Carl Kaufman one of those guys will probably get sent down. But if it's not working with Lamet as a starter, you can either just cut bait with him and let him go find opportunity elsewhere, or you can stick him out in the bullpen. Or if he does start to pan out and starts to give you good quality starts, he can build up some value, then you can trade him. Hopefully, he's in the final year of his contract. He's getting paid $5 million this year. So at the deadline, probably not much. So it's not going to cost you much. You're not getting anything significant for him. But teams, if he's doing well at the deadline or the All-Star break, and teams are in need of starting pitching or a guy that they know like, hey, he's doing well and we can stick him in the rotation or long man or in our bullpen somewhere, it's going to go a long way. And so Rockies have some options. And if they're trying to maximize on that value and do something with it, I think it's really worth it. Dinelson Lamet, he has the history, and I think he's going to do well. Hopefully he can come in and show what he's doing down in Albuquerque with the Rockies. And so that's probably coming in this coming week. We're going to see Dinelson Lamet suit up and start for the Rockies. Could be Wednesday or Thursday, whenever that start would be. But he's coming, and it's worth a shot. So I'm excited to see, because it's nice to see those guys that had that history, and he hasn't been a reliever for very long, so you can still make that transition of, okay, we can stretch this guy back out into a starter. And hopefully the injuries don't resurface. And if they do, well, at least you got a couple of starts out of him, I guess. But excited to see what happens with Dinelson Lamet working on becoming a starter for the Colorado Rockies once again and return back to his roots. I love the quote that he had is, he doesn't like starting pitching, he loves it. And there's something special about being a starter. There are guys that are kind of born and bred to be relievers, but then there's a lot of relievers that were once starters and then just lost their spot or were deemed a failed starter. And honestly, I don't think Lamet is a failed starter. He's just an injured one that lost his spot with the Padres, who decided to not sit around and wait for him and decided to upgrade when they had the opportunity and bring in guys that could be aces and dive into their healthy prospects at the time. So excited to see what happens with him. Again, he'll probably be starting here pretty soon, within maybe this upcoming week. So you'll hear this on Monday. Could be this sometime this week. By June 1st, I think Dinelson Lamet will have started a baseball game for the Colorado Rockies. We'll see. Hopefully we're right. All right, we'll take one last little break here, and then when we come back, close things out and talk a little bit about Ryan McMahon and a little bit of those offensive numbers that he's putting up and just his weird season. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on Affected by Altitude. Alrighty, welcome back here on Affected by Altitude. This is the last segment here. Again, Skyler Timmons, thank you as always here with you hosting on my own today, and I appreciate you tuning in with me this week as Evan is sick. Wish him well, and everybody else was really busy, and it just didn't. Sometimes that happens. Things just don't line up with you. But last thing we want to kind of talk about this week here was Ryan McMahon. He's having a weird season. This is another article that I wrote. We're always self-promoting here. I wrote it was for the IBWAA, the Here's the Pitch newsletter. You can find the Internet Baseball Writers Association of America on Twitter. They have a newsletter. It's really good. Lots of good content coming out of there. Different writers and bloggers and people that are part of that association, myself included. And they give us opportunities to write for a newsletter. And I wrote one about Ryan McMahon because he's one I've been thinking about, because I think it's pretty well documented. Ryan McMahon's offensive prowess this season has left a lot to be desired. In fact, it's almost been non-existent. And I'm sure it's frustrating for him. It's frustrating for maybe frustrating for the organization, and obviously very frustrating for a lot of fans of Ryan McMahon and the Rockies. And it's hard when a good premier guy that we signed an extension to isn't performing. Chris Bryant isn't. That'll be a discussion for another time when I have more guys to kind of vent off of. But this is fresh on my mind talking about Ryan McMahon, because looking at his numbers, things should be better than they are. because you can dive into his numbers and there's not really anything big and obscure or strange happening with how he approaches, how he's up at the plate. You can look at his numbers. His chase rate's pretty standard for his career. His whiff percentage is pretty standard for his career. Walk percentage, strikeout percentage, and everything's kind of the same. The way it's always been, they're relatively pretty close throughout his career. You can look at his page on Baseball Savant, his percentiles. He's hitting the ball hard, he's smoking them, but it's just not doing anything. You can look at his expected home runs, and I believe he's at like 5 right now. According to that, he'd have maybe about 8, depending on some places. Expected batting average is pretty standard, but his power and balls in play and everything should be higher and kind of indicate better results than what he's getting. And it's really strange to see because he is a power bat. We know the potential Ryan McMahon has. He is a power bat. He can go up there and he honestly could put up a 30 homer season and 90 to 100 RBIs. He could do that, but he's not. And a big part of that is, one, the strikeouts. The strikeouts are a problem. And a lot of the swing and misses pretty standard, but it's continued to mount up and get worse. And I think that's the big thing this season is why the power isn't coming is because he's falling behind in the count. He's digging holes for himself. He's swinging at bad pitches and he's striking out a lot. And when you have your guy batting in the 5 or 6 hole, those strikeouts become even more glaring because the guys in front of you are on base. Really, that 5 or 6 hole guy, that 4, 5, 6, they're meant to help drive in runs and set the table for the guys coming up. So where Ryan McMahon hits in the lineup is a very important spot. He's just not doing anything with it. And so those strikeouts are becoming a problem. And we need him to get better. And that's easier said than done, unfortunately. But I think the one thing that people have noted, reporters and everybody, and even some opposing scouts, that there's a hole in Ryan McMahon's swing, and a part of it comes from a big, long swing. If you've watched him, he does stand a little bit more upright, and he has this tendency to. This is something you always notice. It's kind of a long casting swing, so it can get a little long, and when you do that, you're late on everything. You foul off a lot of pitches. You're going to be late. You're going to whiff more because you're just late on everything. You're behind on the pitches. And so hopefully that's something that maybe Bam Bam Mullins or somebody can help him understand is getting that short, compact swing without sacrificing the power. And that's something when Chris Bryant, early in the season, when Chris Bryant was on, he has a nice, short, compact swing, straight path to the ball, and he's able to drive it. Now, he doesn't have much power, and Chris Bryant's a whole nother thing, but you look at some of the great hitters in the game, guys that just seem like they're on with everything. They're smoking everything coming their way. They're on time. When they hit the ball, it's going somewhere. The reason they're able to do that is there's not as much of a hole in their swing because it's short, compact, and it doesn't end up long. That's what's happening to Ryan McMahon. He's got that long swing, and it's sapping his power because we see him when he makes contact, he wallops them. If he can pull a baseball, he wallops them. But the problem is that late swing, that long swing, balls are traveling deeper into the zone, and he's just not able to catch up to them. I looked at his spray chart of hits. Everything was to center and right field. And when you're Ryan McMahon, you think of a left-handed batter at Coors Field, where would you want that guy to be hitting baseballs? You want him pulling them if he can. And we're seeing more often than not, Ryan McMahon, if he's getting pitched to the outside, he's hitting it that way. But if pitches are inside, he's either swinging and missing, fouling them off, or a little dribbler over to first or second for a ground ball, he's out. So we need him to get that pull stroke back in play, so he can wallop some dingers, because that's probably his greatest asset. If he can up the average, be a 250 hitter even. We'll take that, but the power has to come. The plate discipline has to improve, and cut down on those strikeouts. Because when looking at his numbers this season, it's pretty interesting, the drastic changes depending on the count that he faces. On the first pitch of an at-bat, McMahon has a 571 average, a 571 on base. He's slugging 857, which is pretty dang good if you ask me. Once he has a 1-0 count, he's batting 500. He is slugging 1.286. He has 2 home runs in 1-0 counts. Contrast that. When there's 0 balls in total, so any 3-0, 1-0, 2-0, any of those, 0 balls, or when there's 0 strikes, we'll do it that way. 0 strikes, he's batting 533, 548 with a 1.067 slugging percentage, a 1.615 OPS. Pretty dang good. He is an elite hitter when he has no strikes on him. 3-0 count, he hasn't even seen that many 3-0 counts, which tells you a lot. 2-0 counts, again, batting 500. It's only seen a couple of those. But more often than not, he is seeing himself dig into counts with strikes. When there are 0 balls, so 0-1, 0-2, he's hitting 257, 250 on base, 400 slugging. Not ideal. But he's got a couple of his home runs in that, or he has no home runs in those instances. When he's ahead, he's got 3 home runs. When he's ahead in the count, so that's when he has 1-0, 2-1, those kind of counts. When he's ahead, he's got a 302 average. But when he falls behind, that drops down to a $129 batting average. And 31 strikeouts when the pitcher is ahead. When he's ahead, just 9 strikeouts. When he has 2 strikes on him, he has 63 strikeouts. And just 15 walks. Still pretty good. He's battled back a lot of the times, but still a lot of bats end in strikeout. So the key for McMahon, get that short, compact swing, figure out how he can be aggressive early in the count, jump on those first pitches if it comes. His home run against Max Scherzer on Friday night, it came, he saw the first pitch, high and outside, 1-0. All right? Next pitch comes inside on him, a 1-0 pitch. He clobbers it to left field or to right field for a home run off of Max Scherzer, one of the best pitchers of this generation, a guaranteed Hall of Fame pitcher, and takes him deep with that percentage in a 1-0 count. Crushed it. And so that's the key for McMahon. Maybe it's a mental thing of going up, and you don't want to think too much, but understand those odds of, okay, I'm best when I can be aggressive on that first pitch. If that first pitch is there, I'm crushing it. If he can shorten that swing just a little bit, crushing things. But the big thing is, when he's struggling, improve your plate approach, your vision, to make it a better count for his odds, so he can get those hits, get the pitches he wants, and drive baseballs. There's a lot of things to hitting that, I don't prescribe to try and be a professional, and these are things that these guys know. It takes an organization or a good coach or teammate, somebody to come up to him and say, hey, I noticed this when you're batting. This is what maybe we should try doing and work on instead of, McMahon included, of don't be prideful and think, well, no, I'm just not executing. There's more to it. There's a reason why you're not executing. And further explore that. Are you putting too much pressure on yourself? Maybe. Is it a mechanical thing? Probably. There's so much that the organization and the players need to look at more instead of just I'm not executing. When I say these guys got to perform better, that's what I mean. They got to evaluate and change things if they can. And if they can't, oh, that's baseball. So hopefully McMahon can iron some things out because the potential's there. The power's there. We know what kind of player he can be. He's just got to put it together because that contract is getting worse by the minute the more he underperforms. And at some point, he could find himself the same route as many other great players that just have a number of players who have signed those kinds of contracts end up not with the team he signed them with because he just can't do it anymore. And the Rockies could cut him loose with rookies performing better or playing good defense and hitting better. Could cut him loose or trade him to something that could use him. So we'll see, but hopefully things work out for Ryan McMahon because we need him. I like Mac. Hopefully he can figure things out because we need him. And the numbers indicate he should be doing better than he is this season. But with that, that's going to do it here for this edition of Affected by Altitude. Thank you for joining me on this solo show. Hopefully not too grating to hear me talk to you for about 50 minutes or so here, a little less than an hour. But as always, thank you so much for joining with us and supporting the show, tuning in, and checking out everything. You can find us over on Instagram and Twitter at Rocky, ROCKY, MTN Rooftop. And you can also go check out our Spreadshirt shop, a link over on that Twitter account. Get yourself one of these That's Baseball t-shirts. You can find me on Twitter at sideline_crowd. Always writing stuff, sharing jokes and memes. You can also always support the guys that pop up on here, Evan and myself. Follow us. You can follow our work over at purpleroad.com. We've kind of spun off from them with all the budget stuff that we've talked about before. So we're Purple Row adjacent. We're still grateful for all the support they show us, and you can always find articles in this podcast over on purpleroad.com. We always post it over there. Support the website. Helps all of our great writers keep that thing going. And then every download and listen on the podcast and subscribe here on YouTube goes to help try and support the show because we'd love to keep growing this and do more things with it because we love Rockies baseball. We love the fans. We love the community. And we just want a place where we can all vent our frustrations and share our thoughts and ideas about the team. So that'll do it here for this week. As always, again, bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for supporting us. Hopefully we'll have a bigger crew next week aside from just me and everything. But until next time, I'm Skyler. Go Rockies. Go Nuggets. Farewell. This has been Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. Catch new episodes every Monday on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to follow us on YouTube as well for video versions of the show.